Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and dear listeners. Welcome back to episode 2 of the Arizona Teabacks podcast, Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage related podcast. I am Benji, your host, as always, and beside me this week I am joined by a piping hot cup of Twinings Vanilla Chai for our drink of the week. This week, in episode 2, our title, catchy as always, is Hey Now, You're an All-Star. We're going to get right into it. We're leading off talking about the selection for the 2023 All-Star Game in Seattle and the news that Corbin Carroll, one of the D-backs outfielders, has made the team. He's headed to Seattle, but we're also going to look at who else from the D-backs deserves a spot and who might have just missed out. So, let's think about this for a second. Corbin Carroll, in his rookie season, has made it to the All-Star Game, and will be joined by one other rookie, which is obviously Josh Jung. And Josh Jung definitely deserves his place there as well, a very good player. But it's special to see a D-back make the team, especially given the fact that last year, with the game being held in Los Angeles, the only player we had in the lineup was one of the coach-selected players. It was a pitcher, it was Joe Manaply, who's failed to really shine for the D-backs this season, so it really shows the quality that this D-backs lineup is containing, but it also shows the kind of the reception in the world of baseball amongst everyone, and just the kind of impact that, you know, Corbin Carroll and this D-backs team have been making. Just they play exciting, scrappy baseball. People love to root for an underdog, and I think there's more of a sense of Arizona being a team that everyone can get behind. I know that the Cincinnati Reds are kind of known as America's team, and with Ellie De La Cruz in there, and that's a team that you can't help but just keep an eye out for, see how they're doing. But they're not represented in the All-Star Game, but the D-backs are. If you look at the teams with starters named to the All-Star Game, Texas lead the way with 4, the Dodgers have 3, Atlanta has 3, the Angels have 2, Tampa Bay has 2, only 1 for the Yankees, 1 for the Marlins, 1 for the D-backs, and 1 for the Cardinals. So that kind of goes a long way into showing how much of an impact on kind of the national and the global scale this D-backs team are making. So with Corbin Carroll headed to Seattle, obviously everyone knows the story by now. His mother, Palin Carroll, has kind of been heading up the campaign to get her son to the All-Star Game, and obviously has succeeded. But who else in this D-backs lineup really deserves a spot? That's what we're going to talk about to start off the episode today. I've looking through the stats, and I think we can probably guess which one of the D-backs pitchers is probably headed to the All-Star Game. That's going to be Zach Gallen. He's the milkman, he delivers, and he's really started to show some improvements of just being one of the best pitchers in the game now. Last year, he kind of struggled playing away from home. He was fine at Chase Field and would regularly dominate games, get 6 or 7 innings in, and you could really see signs that he was an elite pitcher. But this year, he's starting to get that confidence, because he knows that he's not going to be let down by the batting as much as he was last year. Last year, there were a lot of performances where Gallen would throw as well as he ever did, and the D-backs would just not capitalize on it, give up some easy mistakes in the outfield, let some runs in, and then fail to make them up when they were playing on the offense. So I think we'll probably see Zach Gallen in one of those kind of seafoam colored All-Star jerseys this year. But there are a few other candidates kind of in the infield and the outfield who deserve their shots. I think Lourdes Gurriel Jr. was unlucky not to make a starting spot in that outfield. He came in 4th in the voting for the outfield starters for the National League, and it's a shame that we won't see Pena Power from the offset, but I know for a fact he'll probably be there. He's just so much of a popular guy and has been making such an impact in the D-backs lineup, and what a trade he's turned out to be. And I think having the All-Star Game taking place without him would probably not make a tremendous amount of sense. So I think we'll see Lourdes there. But two people who've probably gone, I won't say under the radar, because they're some of the standout performers in this D-backs team, aside from the really obvious candidates, is Christian Walker and Geraldo Perdomo. Like, Christian Walker, he's one of our big power hitters. Very rarely does he hit for anything less than a double. He's always aiming to hit it to that far corner of the outfield, going for the warning track and going for those home runs, and very regularly delivering upon them. I don't think I can name many players that hit as regularly for a homer as Walker does when he gets at bat. But obviously that first baseman position is hotly contested, so I think it's no surprise that we're not going to see Walker at the All-Star game, given some of the alternative candidates that there are for that position. But I think he would deserve a place if it wasn't just a popularity contest, if All-Star game voting was based very much on performance and impact and kind of the mentality of a player. I think Christian Walker would be kind of a shoo-in for one of those first baseman spots. And then the other player I wanted to highlight is Geraldo Perdomo. The D-backs shortstop / second baseman has been probably having one of his big breakout seasons. He's not very very old for his position. He's by far not a rookie, but Perdomo this year has really started into a bit of an interesting, diverse hitter. He's been put in that leadoff spot in the order a few times. He's really delivered. He's started to add kind of hitting for some bigger scores, some triples and some home runs into his repertoire, and has been really strong when it comes to getting at the plate and not just relying on speed to make it safe to first base. The D-backs are a team that's blessed with tremendous amounts of speed, with Corbin, Carroll and Perdomo, and then players like Jake McCarthy, all putting together that track meet as it's called. But Perdomo this year has really switched up the way he bats. He's looking at the way he does it, and I think he's taken a bit of a leaf out of seeing how Jake McCarthy got sent down to AAA and was told to adjust his swing and try and swing differently. And you saw how that had affected the way that Jake McCarthy was playing. The same goes for Alek Thomas, with Alek Thomas coming back and at its first at bat, facing his first pitch immediately, hitting a home run. Perdomo hasn't changed his technique that dramatically, but he's certainly changed his attitude towards how he plays when he's swinging. He's someone who'll no longer just kind of wait and seem to be inert until he gets a pitch he thinks he can swing at. He's been much more aggressive in the way he defends the strike zone with his swinging, and has become a kind of a major asset for the D-backs. So another shout for somebody who probably deserves their spot in the All-Star game, but whether or not he would go for the shortstop spot or for that second baseman spot, which he's been used in occasionally this year, Torey Lovullo has put him in a variety of positions just behind that pitching mound. But Perdomo would definitely deserve his shot, and you've seen the way he's kind of meshed and gelled into this D-backs lineup. I think were you to have more than just the one starting D-back at the All-Star game, I think Perdomo would be kind of one of those big shouts that you really have to say, hey, this guy probably deserves a shot. But, let's move on from just me ranting about the D-backs not having enough people in the All-Star game. Let's look at some other talking points, especially the game last night. And it would have been the game from this morning if you were like me watching from the UK. So, in case you've been living under a rock for the last 24 hours, the D-backs played the Angels, and it was live on Apple TV, which was something of a novelty, but certainly the coverage didn't suffer that much. So let's have a little bit of a review of the game. The standout moments for the D-backs side of things was probably the Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Grand Slam, which was great to see. I think Lourdes is very much over his injury recovery period now, so you're going to start to see a lot more of him being able to swing the way that he started off with the season, with that long hitting streak he went on right at the start of this year. I think Lourdes is going to get back to that kind of heady heights, and I think were it not for the kind of injury hit period in which he didn't play a few more games, you'd probably be looking at him in the All-Star game as well, given that he was number 4 overall in the National League outfielder voting. And I said to my partner this morning, if he'd have hit that Grand Slam home run against the Angels kind of 2 weeks ago, while All-Star voting was still the main thing in a lot of people's heads, he definitely made the spot, and he was unlucky that he hit that less than 24 hours after the main voting closed. But that being said, it was a win for the D-backs, in no small part down to a very impressive catch that Jake McCarthy made, diving, getting it right in the tip of his glove in the 4th, and that kind of halted a bit of a rally that the Angels were starting to put together. And despite an absolutely incredible 493-foot home run from probably the best baseball player in the world right now, Shohei Ohtani, D-backs held on, and we got a win in the first game of the series, which was good to see. I think coming off of those wins against Tampa, the D-backs looked like they were on a bit more of a roll, and even though Ohtani wasn't pitching, I think it's still an intimidating thing to come up against the Angels. Even if their record doesn't show it, they're one of the teams that on their night they can really intimidate an opponent. Not just with Ohtani, but with Mike Trout, whether or not he plays, he'll always be a presence in that ballpark. So to go and challenge them, I think was a really strong statement that the D-backs could make here about that they'll take anybody on, and kind of that underdog spirit is less of a hope in this case and more of a belief that rather than just try and see what you can get from an opponent, to go out and believe that this team does actually have the quality to challenge with the best players in the game, from both sides of the ocean, with Ohtani and with Trout, to look them in the eye and say, I'm not gonna let you beat me. I think that's a strength that the D-backs have really come into this season, and they've made some smart trades. Like I said, they brought in Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and they've got some of the kind of middle of the road players really playing to their strengths. Last week we talked about how Ketel Marte has really emerged as one of the leaders in that dressing room, and they've started to get more out of some of the other teams, and getting some results out of those teams, I should say. And I think we're only going to go from strength to strength at this point. We have to now look at the news that came out following last night's game against the Angels, that the D-backs have taken the option to send Pavin Smith down to AAA Reno, and it's a return for Kyle Lewis from his rehab in Reno. He's been batting like crazy, and I think it's good to see Kyle Lewis come back in. I think with the addition there, the D-backs probably have their strongest outfield candidates now. Pavin Smith hadn't been doing terribly for us this year, but wasn't a batter that really inspired the confidence that some of the offense does. He had a few turns out there in the outfield. He was out in the right fielder slot for a while, and then he was playing as the DH after we got Alek Thomas and Jake McCarthy kind of rolling this year. But I think that he's a player that's really relied on confidence, and his confidence took a bit of a blow 4 or 5 games ago, and he's not really looked like somebody you can count on all the time. And bringing Kyle Lewis back, even if it's just for a little while, it's gonna shake up that dressing room a bit and say, hey, there's a bit of competition for some of these spots now. So people need to start delivering if you want to get something off of this team. And we've also brought in Dominic Canzone, who's not a player I will admit I know a tremendous amount about, but has always been mentioned on some of these kind of D-backs rookie and prospect report accounts as a player who we need to at least be taking a look at. So I think that's going to be an exciting thing to see, and you'll hear my verdict on them after I've watched them in a few games fairly soon. But until then, we've just got to go and see. But looking at this 40-man roster now, I think we are still missing the pitches that I was crying out for. Like, Zach Davies has started to really mend some of the issues that people have been calling out for a solution to. I still think that there's quality in our starting rotation. There's no doubt about that. Like, if you look beyond Zach Gallen and then Merrill Kelly, we have good pitching, and the bullpen has let us down a lot less than in previous years this year. But there is still that kind of shakiness in the starting pitches. Like, sometimes Zach Davies can come in, and he had a great game against the Angels last night, but sometimes he's going to come in and you just know he's going to give up something big, and that's not what we need in our number 3 and number 4 starting pitchers. Our rotation really needs some of that work, but we just haven't had it yet. So when we think about how the D-backs pitch, there needs to be an improvement. And it's fine to rely on your offense at times, but you can't always count on them, even if they are in such tremendous form like this Diamondbacks offense is. So getting some pitching improvements in there would be wonderful. And last week I closed out the podcast by saying how wonderful it would be to see somebody like Shohei Ohtani come into this D-backs dressing room and show how they could perform. But since we can't count on things like that, we really should have been looking at some trades, and I would have liked to have seen us go for somebody like a Aroldis Chapman or something. And unrealistic though it may be, it would have been something to consider. It would have been a statement of intent to the rest of the teams in the league. Now, Texas Rangers are absolutely flying at the moment, so how likely would it have been that we'd have got them over? We'd have got Aroldis over the Rangers? Not very, and this is a trade that the Rangers have given up a significant amount of value to make happen. But when you look at the farm and the fact that it's been kind of very productive for the D-backs over the past few years, and the D-backs record has helped them to get a number of quite high-ranking draft picks, I think there were some options there that could have made significant trades involved there. And, I don't know what the D-backs are going to do about this now. It seems like Torey Lovullo has an idea about what they want to do with our starting pitch rotation, and he seems to have a lot of faith in players like Ryan Nelson and Zach Davies to keep giving them starts and keep giving them chances. But we can't always rely on things like that. So it's all about this mentality thing, and the outfield seems to have it and the offense seems to have it, but I don't think that's always going to result in the things we need it to be. So we don't know. And Brandon Pfaadt has also been sent down to Reno following the game yesterday, so that's another pitching experiment that we're not likely to see much from this year. So you really have to wonder who are the D-backs going to come in, and what's going to happen there. Because Tommy Henry pitching against the A's last night, or this morning, had an excellent game, and despite giving up the longest home run of the year, it was to the best player in baseball. So we can't look at this Shohei Ohtani home run hit against us and think, this is a nail in a coffin. This is the death knell of Tommy Henry as a D-backs pitcher. Because otherwise, I have full confidence that they would have pulled the trigger and sent him down to AAA or AA or anywhere in the minors. Because we've shown this year we're not afraid of pulling that trigger. Madison Bumgarner felt the full force of that, and we're still paying $35 million out of an $80 million contract to Bumgarner solely because of this, and he's not found himself another team. And I think if I were in his position, I'd be taking that money too. But the rest of that contract needs to go somewhere. It needs to be going towards a starting pitcher of at least similar quality. Like, Bumgarner started with 0-3 this year and had a terrible record and looked a shadow of their former self from their playing days at the Giants last year as well. They were not a player I had a tremendous amount of faith in, and even though they were the starting pitcher in the first ever game I attended at Chase Field, so I have a bit of a soft spot for them, you can't expect a 105-year-old pitcher to still perform at the levels that they did when they were in their 20s and early 30s. So what are we going to do? I'd be very interested to see what some of the speculation yields about who we should go for and why and what we would trade for them. Because I don't think there's many players in their free agency right now who would really fill the gap with the kind of quality that the D-backs need to maintain their lead at the top of the NL West. But I don't know who else is really available, who we could go for. And aside from, like I mentioned last week, crossing our fingers, putting our hands together, bowing our heads, closing our eyes, and praying that we can put a somewhat attractive offer on the table for Shohei Ohtani at the end of their current contract with their free agency at the A's approaching, it's hard to see which way the D-backs go in terms of pitching. So I'm gonna start to make this a bit of a tradition and close the podcast by saying, Shohei, please come to the D-backs. Like, I don't care what kind of contract we have to throw at them. I don't care if we have to buy half the Valley's real estate and turn it into an Ohtani baseball complex apartment where he would basically own most of the Valley. If we have to do that to get Shohei to come to us, I think that's what we should do. So I'm gonna close the podcast out with that mental image fresh in your minds of Shohei Ohtani in a D-backs jersey. I would like to thank everybody very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.